foundation models are good enough that the agents are actually capable of doing like non-trivial things. The state of the art to do that kind of agentic transaction is to literally give the agent my password. And then once it has my password, it logs in as me. Those instructions can then be used to first read your private data and then exfiltrate it out to some external source. There's lots of ways of doing that. So if you have the combination of those three things, you're pretty much doomed.
Are you ready for AI to start browsing the web? As AI agents start to proliferate all across the internet, we have a few things we need to discuss. How do we handle authentication? Do you really want your AI agents signing in as you? How do you make your website optimized for consumption by these agents? And do we really need to start scanning our eyeballs in order to have a safe internet? On episode 58 of Tool Use, brought to you by ToolHive, we're covering all this and more. We're joined by Bobbie Chen, who's a product manager at Stytch, who handles bot detection and AI agent detection. He's also one of the organizers of AGI Builders, and he's very well versed in this. So please enjoy this conversation with Bobbie Chen.
AI agents are kind of really a hyped and overloaded word right now. But when someone says agents, the thing that I usually think of is I have some kind of automation. It's going to go do something for me based on my intent. And it doesn't necessarily follow a fixed flow. And I've seen people draw the distinction sort of like if you have some straight line automation, like it always does these kinds of tasks in a certain order, maybe that's not quite an agent. But an agent is able to look at the results of some of these things that are coming back and adjust what it's doing. In order to achieve those goals. And so I think we see that most with like coding agents is probably one of the purest forms of that today. So like if you're using Cursor or something or any number of other coding agents, you often get in the state where you're like, please add this feature. And it'll go and add the feature and it'll say, okay, I'm running the test now to see if it worked. And then, oops, I broke a test. Let me go back and fix other things. And that's what I think is the core of sort of agents. So I guess getting that definition aside, I think like agents are in a really interesting position here because how should I say this? I think the foundation models are good enough that the agents are actually capable of doing like non-trivial things. Like I'd say 2 years ago, you could basically do a canned demo in a very controlled environment. 1 year ago, you had better chances, but it's probably not something that you want to run in production without constant babysitting. And today, I really do think we're in a realistic position where you can actually have AI agents doing useful work for you. And that's really exciting. It's kind of like an open world, I would say. It's that we're at the very beginning here, and so there hasn't really settled on a consistent set, like, oh, everyone's doing these best practices, so to say, because the field changes so quickly.
Yeah, we're still just figuring it out, which is very exciting, but also difficult at times because the same problem kind of gets solved over and over by different people, and we're trying to figure out how everyone can do it. When you mentioned this open world, I feel like web agents are the prime example of that because you can't really scope it to like your project, your computer. As soon as you go on a website, there could be anything there. It could be like malicious code hidden in the HTML. It could be just poorly written, poorly structured. So as soon as we start entering the web, that's when things is like the real test I found because it is a complete infinity option environment. So as we start applying to like AI agents to the web, where do you see some general risks start showing up?
Yeah, I think so. AI agents on the web, so especially things that people call browser use or browser using agents, using the web, I think there are great opportunities here, but also risks. So like the opportunity is that, well, people today use websites and apps for all kinds of things. So if you're able to get an agent to do that, now you don't have to reinvent a bunch of wheels to get it to do useful stuff. So that's great. On the flip side, I think there are parts about, I guess, the experience of being an agent that are different from that of being a human. And I think one of the clearest places where that shows up is auth and authentication specifically. So that's like, hey, I have my agent. I'm going to have it go shopping for me for something that I don't particularly care about. Today, the state of the art to do that kind of agentic transaction is to literally give the agent my password. And then once it has my password, it logs in as me. And I think what we've learned before in previous places in, I guess, computing history is that when you give an automation full access to be you, you're opening the risk that whether that's a bug or some kind of malicious attack, that this bot is able to say, log into my Amazon account and actually buy a bunch of stuff that I don't want, or delete my entire account entirely, or there's all these kinds of, I'd say, destructive or riskier transactions that I don't actually want an automation to take on my behalf. But if I'm like browser first, browser only, the only thing I can do is say, bot, please fully impersonate me. And that's a mistake that I see a lot of developers doing today.
Yeah, because I remember Anthropic ran the experiment when they had their AI operating a vending machine, and people were able to jailbreak it to like order them a tungsten cube and like give me a full refund and stuff. And while we're at a point when the capability of them is vast, the capability of jailbreaking them and manipulating them is still very accessible to many people. So with the idea of having giving a password as a risky endeavor, what are some approaches people are taking to try to circumvent this? Like, how could we make agents their own little entity rather than just a extension of you or the user?
There is a lot to do, basically, to make the agent have your capabilities, but not necessarily all of them. And the good news is that actually we do have experience doing this through the OAuth specification. So OAuth is, you probably most frequently see it in kinds of like social login, or it's like I'm logging into this site using my Google account. Or sometimes you actually get these consent screens that are like, oh, would you like to share your name and your email address with this website? And that kind of scoped access is exactly applicable to agents. So I want to be able to give an agent the ability to say, to have basically the permissions and the access that I have, but some subset of them that I think is reasonable, that I can consent to either in advance or at the time when that agent is trying to do that transaction. And like, so that all makes sense in concept. And I think once you agree with the concept, then the nuts and bolts, it's like, oh great, there's actually like the OAuth specification, there's like 1,000 variations of them. There's a OAuth flavor for MCP authentication as well that's standardized today, and that's being actively worked on. So I think it's good for us to be building on top of what we've already done in order to bring these like same scoped permissions to users.
One thing that came across is the idea of a bot registry, where you can take your agent that you want to just let loose on the web, register it with this entity, and then you kind of get granted a passport or like a green light to access sites and just like a little awareness. What are your thoughts on that type of approach?
I think the idea of a registry is very tempting because you're like, oh, well, someone should just be in charge of this. We basically have like a benevolent dictator who's going to do the right thing and take care of all of us. And to be honest, in the past, there are things that have worked like that. Like the entire DNS system used to be run by a single guy who was out of, I think it was UCLA, John Postel. And he basically like kept all the domain names and IP addresses in like a spreadsheet. And that worked for a little while. But over time, it's something that you don't want a single person or even a single organization to be in control because that's a lot of power for them to have. And so I think the idea of the internet and the idea of the web and open protocols enable us to do things that are decentralized in meaningful ways. And so I know you're mentioning the idea of like a registry and gatekeeping because just a few weeks ago, there was a bit of controversy around Cloudflare just launched a feature which they're calling verified agents, in which you do, as part of their process, register with them. So you give them a certain amount of information and then they can sort of check off things about your implementation and expose those to users who are using Cloudflare for a CDN or for a web app firewall, things like that. And that's controversial. I think, it's not Cloudflare's fault here that they are a popular and successful service that is used by large portions of the internet. But at the same time, we don't necessarily want them to control that. And so I think the interesting thing about the Cloudflare proposal is that it is actually based on an emerging open standard, and that open standard is called Web Bot Auth. And so Web Bot Auth is something that helps agents and bots and other kinds of automation, things that are like search engine crawlers as well, identify themselves in a way that can't be spoofed. And that's important because today you might be familiar with, there's the concept of a user agent header. That's basically like I come to you and I say, hey, my name's Bobbie. Nice to meet you. And the problem with user agent today is that it's pretty much just a string. Like you can throw anything in there. Like I can come up to you and say, hey, I'm Mike's grandma. Please send me a bunch of stuff that is private to our family. And on the other side, as a server, you don't know that the user agent actually represents who you are. So what Web Bot Auth does is it enables agents to tie their identities to cryptographic keys. So I'm going to take my message to you. It's going to say, "Hi, I'm Bobbie," and I'm going to sign it with a key. And so it's asymmetric cryptography. There's a private key and there's a public key. So there's somewhere out there, there's a public key associated with my name. I'll tell you how to go find it. And you can go verify that message and actually say, okay, I definitely know this is Bobbie. And that's great. That's like the good case. And the important thing that's different from user agent is that now it's impossible for someone else to go out and say, hey, my name's Bobbie. Here's my signature, because then you look at that signature, you can verify it against my public key and say, actually, that's not Bobbie, that's someone else. Or this guy didn't sign his message, and I know that Bobbie always signs his messages. So there's the value of Web Bot Auth. That's sort of at the core of what Cloudflare is proposing in their verified agents. And actually, we're working at Stytch to enable Web Bot Auth verification for our customers as well. I think this is pretty much just a total good for everyone who's operating a bot and doesn't want to be impersonated.
Very cool. I'm 100% on board with the idea of the open protocols. That's how the internet has flourished to the way it is. We really need to make sure we support stuff like this. I'd like to pivot a little bit, because just thinking about the way that you can cryptographically sign a user agent so we know it's a certain bot, is there a reason we can't start improving the human web browsing experience with similar technology? So for example, instead of me having to go fill out all these CAPTCHAs on all the website, there could be something that verifies me as a user is me, or is because the association would just be with whether it's my computer or something, I could put a bot on my computer. Like, what's preventing that type of auth and like authentication applying to like people browsing the web?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting idea. And so there are kind of things that exist sort of like it that ultimately go back to cryptographic keys rather than like truly like live personhood. I think the challenges this space is it's really hard to do this in a way that is privacy preserving, that's not super invasive, basically, or requiring huge amounts of personal data to be like strewn around everywhere. And so I'll talk about, so in Estonia, there is like a government EID in which you more or less get a card that has a smart chip in it, and that chip is actually a set of signing keys. And so these are issued to you in kind of the way that you'd get a driver's license in the US, maybe. And you can use this to sign things to say, this is really me, and you know that it's me because the government issued me this key, and the government is supposed to do certain kinds of identity verification on me. I think there are similar, I've heard of similar systems in like South Korea in using government IDs to bootstrap things. And ultimately, I think because the government already needs to know a lot of this information, they're sort of the natural place for this to live. But then that kind of flips things around in that even though I sign things with a particular key, I don't necessarily want every website on the internet to know exactly who I am as a human user. So the other tech part that I think is interesting is zero knowledge proofs here, in which by, depending on what protocol and the details, you can basically get a signature that says, well, the government says the person who signed this is at least 18 years old, for example. And that's the only piece of information that you get. You don't get my name, you don't get my exact birthday, things like that. And so I would say, again, the technical pieces are here, but it's going to take a lot of sort of political and organizational will to, I would say, make them like a practical reality.
Yeah, and just one real life example that I always thought was preposterous. Where I live, the drinking age is 19. And it just feels weird that you'll have like a 19-year-old woman go into a liquor store and have to show an employee her home address on her identification just to like purchase alcohol. Like, there should be a binary, yes, no, I am of age. Like, there is proof. You shouldn't have to hand over all your personal information. On the same note as like proof of personhood, do you mind giving your thoughts on the idea of WorldCoin, which I believe is now branded as World, or Coin, actually don't remember, where they'll actually scan your eyeball in order to prove you're a person? We're deviating away from the idea of the web agents, but I still feel there's a new age of the digital world now where we really have to start validating like what's an AI agent, what's a malicious bot, what's a person. Do you have thoughts on how that's playing out? Do you think it's the right approach, or are we going down the wrong path with eyeball scanning?
Yeah, I think, eyeball scanning is never going to be everyone's like, yeah, that's obviously a good idea. We should all be scanning our eyeballs. I think it's actually to take a step back and reframe this. I would say, is it really important that there are things with a real human associated with them? Because I think traditionally, um, when we talk about automation and we talk about the value of APIs and so on, there's actually quite a lot of value that comes from letting people access your systems in ways that are beneficial to them, even if that might not be a true human. And so, the co-founders of the company I work for, Stytch, originally came from Plaid. And Plaid actually had a bit of this kind of tension with banking providers early on, in that Plaid was providing APIs to automate banks, even when those banks themselves didn't have APIs behind them. But sort of, and so there was a tension initially where the banks were trying to stop Plaid from doing that. Eventually, they realized that there actually is a lot of value that people are like building new applications and new ways to analyze and gain value from what the banks are providing, just because you're giving them the ability to access them in new ways. And so I've kind of come a long way, but which is all this to say that I think bots and automation can be viewed as sort of the original user agent, right? This is an agent that's trying to accomplish something on behalf of a person or perhaps an organization. And what that means is that you really want to look if those actions are something that you want versus at that level. Is this action something that I want? Is that something that I like? As opposed to, is there a human on the other side? I don't know if you've seen this meme that's like, please drink verification can. I don't want to be drinking a verification can. I don't want to be scanning my eyeballs necessarily, even though that might be very useful and unspoofable in certain ways. It's, I would say, invasive in other ways. It's a privacy risk. And I think unlike, say, losing my driver's license or losing a passport, it's kind of unlikely that I'm going to lose my eyeballs and need to replace them. So it's something that I won't lose, but at the same time, if it leaks, that's something that's just like a permanent danger to me, much in the way that like a social security number is to people today.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you, does it really matter to identify agents? But I love the way you've reframed it as, does it really matter to identify humans? Like it's the issue is malicious behavior versus intentional behavior. And one theory I have that might contribute to it is the fact that so much of our internet is ad driven, where there's a financial incentive to make sure the consumer of that information is a human to get the advertisement there. Do you think as AI agents become a greater and greater share of the web browsing experience, that'll impact the way that either monetization happens or ads happens? Because we've seen things like how Apple will I forget exactly what they did. They changed it so you couldn't identify the user and they just had like a generic advertising ID. So they got to control all the ad spend there. So maybe the AI providers like OpenAI will be the ones serving you ads rather than what's on a website, since it's their agent consuming it. Like, how do you see the monetization of the internet unfolding in this AI age?
Yeah, I think there's like a lot. So there's like currently, I would say there's a understanding between sort of media companies and advertisers and traditionally the search engines or the other ad platforms like Google and Meta. And so that's kind of well understood at this point that I'm going to provide media. The search engines are going to slurp it up and perhaps serve ads related to that. And those ads or the search engine results are going to drive traffic back to me. So that's like a cycle in which all three of the parties are benefiting. With AI agents, I think this is risky, basically for traditional advertisers and traditional media companies, because you're not exactly sure how these agents are going to represent that data. So maybe it's that you really hate being advertised to, let's say. And you've got an agent that's like, go tell me all the real content that's totally factual, remove all marketing spin, and things like that. And so there's multiple angles on this. I would say at the agent side, there's a huge incentive for the agent to give you ads because now that's the new distribution mechanism. Like the agent is replacing Google in the previous result, and now the agent has the opportunity to serve ads. So there's a huge monetary incentive for the AI companies to be doing that. At the same time, there's a trust issue, right? People today really like using, say, ChatGPT or other AI tools because it is not so ad filled as other traditional ways of getting information. And so that, I think, is a tension. I think ultimately the AI companies will try to do some form of advertising, but it will be challenging for them. And Drew Brunig just put out a blog post maybe last week, a couple of weeks ago, about the different ways that AI companies might try to advertise, whether that's something like a banner ad, something that's like affiliate links, or something that's like a little more nefarious and less trustworthy, where you get things in actual responses that are leaning towards advertisers. So there's a tension there. That's on the platform side and sort of on the distribution. On the media company side, I think you have the same issue. Like, should I serve ads at all if the only people are going to be reading these are agents who might ignore the ads? What does that mean for my ad spend, or the money that I'm going to get from ads? And what does that mean for my content if I'm going to write all these words and no person is going to read them, but they're going to get slurped up into some machine as well? So I think a lot of what we see around agent identification is actually sort of related to that. So I've had talks on agent identification from companies that have a lot of media, whether that's their own or it's their user-generated content, that they might be thinking about licensing. Say I cut a deal with Anthropic, that they're allowed to train on my data, but other companies are not. Then I really need a way to reliably identify Anthropic's bots, as opposed to all the other bots who might be trying to look at that same data, because it erodes the value of a exclusive licensing deal if it's not actually exclusive. And then the other piece here is that the people who are buying the ads, right, the companies who are trying to sell you things, basically need to figure out a whole new playbook. And I think we're kind of in the early days here where in the earlier days of like Google, there was what people would call black hat SEO, where you can like keyword stuff your way into the top results. There's probably something similar that's going on, and this is always adversarial. There's always an incentive to try to manipulate rankings, whether that's in a traditional search engine or in AI, LLM-based search models or agents to try and get you to the top. And I'm sure there are teams battling it out today to basically discover those deceptive practices so that sites get penalized for trying to manipulate rankings like that.
Yeah, there was a story way back in the day. I can't remember exactly the details of it, but someone would go onto ChatGPT, ask about their company. It would respond not knowing about their company, and they just downvote the answer. And they do this repeatedly, and it would ask for like a correction, and then eventually their company would get into the training data, and then for all future models, they would be referenced. Ty, back in the day, Ty Fierro put together an AI SEO script where during the time that OpenAI, and I believe Google as well, were giving free credits, he wrote a script that would have two bots talking to each other very positively about a product or a service. And because it's using the free credits, you agree that the data that's happening in those conversations could be used for training future models. So those are two ways where, even though you're like playing by the rules and everything's like fair game, you are trying to sway the opinion of the AI. And we never know, once it's in the training data, will it be pruned in the future, or is that just perpetually what's going to be referenced? So do you have any other thoughts on AI SEO in terms of, is it ethical? Are there ways that we can do it for those of us that want to try to bump up the ratings? I believe if you ask it about Tool Use Podcast, I think I show up, but I'm not entirely sure. It'd be awesome if it would, but is that even a moral thing to ask for?
Yeah, I think, so to step back from like the SEO tactics specifically, I'm sure there's lots of little things that you can do on the ground that'll like tilt your odds one way or another. Over time, I think those advantages are going to erode, but right now, there's probably still a little juice left to squeeze. But I think stepping back, sort of, I'm maybe being optimistic here, but I think a lot of the best content for AIs is actually really great for humans as well. And so I was talking to Ben Swerdlow, who's the founder of a company called Freestyle Cloud, about his strategy in writing documentation. And that a lot of documentation is for his customer base is very AI forward. They're like building AI app builder sites, so very meta there. But for a lot of them, they're heavily using coding agents, and those coding agents do really well actually when you consume docs that are like, hey, I have this exact problem. Here are the exact steps that you take to go fix them. Uh, Go do it. And that's like not something that I would consider to be like a cool AI agent trick. That's just called writing good documentation. And so when you write docs that are good for humans, oftentimes they end up being good for bots as well. And stepping away from sort of like the consuming of information, but sort of the actual doing actions, I think we're starting to see this play out in the design of APIs as well. So like, I think in the early days, if you said, I'm going to spin up an MCP server, that MCP server might look identical to your APIs. And if you've built your APIs using sort of a traditional RESTful quote unquote model, whatever that means, it means that in order to do anything, you have a bunch of different API resources. You're going to go do a post and then get the result of something else and take that and go do post something else in order to achieve a particular workflow. And what that means is that it ends up being actually a lot of steps. So if you expose each of those steps to a bot as a, say, individual tool call or action that they need to take, you're running the risk that as you need to chain more and more of these things together, it really lowers the reliability of your system. And now you end up in the world where you have sort of like convenience functions or tool calls that are MCP, API endpoints basically, that are just like those 5 things chained together. And so I just saw it at an event the other day. The founder of a company called Arcade was talking about how if you want to do an action that's like reply to an email thread in Gmail, there's no API call actually that will let you reply to a particular thread in Gmail. It's like you read all the threads, you pick a particular email, and actually you can't reply to the thread. You need to like reconstruct the format of an email that is supposed to be sent to go to that thread. So if you make your AI agent do all of those things at once, it's very likely to get confused and mess it up. Actually, that I think it's a good sign that a human is also likely to get confused and mess it up. And so that means that if you want people to reply to emails as part of your API flow, you should probably just expose an endpoint that says reply to email. I don't really care under the hood that it's calling these 5 API endpoints because that's how your system works. From my perspective, I want to do one thing. Give me one call that I can do to do that one thing, and let's go.
Absolutely. So I love the direction this is taking. I've also heard, Hi Niam was telling me about this new way of framing the way you think about MCPs, exactly like you said. Don't just do a replication or API, do workflows, do entire functionality bits just to make it easier. Do you think as developers, we should continue to approach APIs the same way that we have and just allow things like MCP and other protocols to be more agent friendly? Or should we start looking at APIs as something that'll be like a hybrid consumption from humans and agents and try to redesign it there? Like, do you think, changing what already exists or just adding something new? What's the better route for a hybrid model of consumption?
Yeah, I think that it's both maybe. I think there's always value to having low-level primitives that you can chain together and maybe manipulate in ways that the original creator had not thought of. And so there's value in doing that. And at the same time, I do think it's a mistake if you have a product and you're building out an API for it that you say, I'm going to give people all the Legos in the box and they're going to go build whatever they want. Like they need at least a picture of, here's the cool spaceship you can build with these Legos, here's some ideas. Ideally you chain those together as like helper calls or as higher level API functions. And so I think and I used to be a software engineer myself, I'm a product manager now. I think as a software engineer, it is really tempting to say, well, I'll give people, a couple of building blocks and actually it's Turing complete. So you could do anything you could possibly want in it. And nobody wants a machine that can do anything. Everyone wants a machine that can do exactly the one thing that they want to do at this moment.
It's clear AI agents are going to be all over the internet, and to get real benefit from them, you're going to want to give them access to your data in your real systems, and that can be a little bit scary, which is why I've been using ToolHive. ToolHive makes it simple and secure to use MCP. It includes the registry of trusted MCP servers. It lets me containerize any other server with a single command. I can install it in a client in seconds, and secret protection and network isolation are built in. You can try ToolHive too. It's free and it's open source, and you can learn more at toolhive.dev. Now back to the conversation with Bobbie. Do you think that there is supplementation that we should add, whether it's something like an llm.txt or another, maybe just better descriptions in the open API spec that it gets exposed to help the consumption from the agents? Because I imagine as the developer of an agent, I'll tell it to do a certain thing and it can go off and figure it out. If I'm very explicit, I say, use this endpoint, it loses a lot of its agency. But if you tell it, browse the web, this is the goal you have to figure out how to do, and then it comes across your website and you give it a collection of documentation to figure it out, should we start, is lm.txt enough? Should we do something more? Or how should we approach the augmenting information for data consumption?
Yeah. So I think LLMs.txt is a great idea. Things like LLMs.txt are using MCP servers and generally transforming information that's better suited for the person or thing that's going to consume it is always a good idea. I do think one of the things that is challenging is sort of, how do we do that in a way that doesn't require a lot of manual effort or hand tailoring of content. And so I think we're pretty much already there with LLMs.txt. Like no matter what you build your website in, there's probably some fairly simple tools that you can run that will just grab the text content of your website so that you can format them in a certain way. Whereas something like, describing the workflows that you would expect to exist in an MCP server, I think this is something that does require attention. At least someone needs to define what these are, because that's a form of, that's like a value judgment is what I would say. It's like, these are good things to do. You should do things in a certain way, and this is how you do them. Whereas other things are kind of nuts and bolts that ultimately bots are really good at the nuts and bolts of doing things.
Yeah, and on top of that, we've also touched on documentation. Even though things set up that are good for humans are also good for bots, I have come across things like reducing the amount of HTML tags, like trying to get rid of the clutter to help not steer an LLM. And they are getting better and able to kind of take more varied input. But do you have any tips, best practices, suggestions for writing these artifacts, whether documentations or LLMs.txt, so that it is better consumed by an AI agent to improve the likelihood of success?
Yeah, so I think first, I think there's no substitute for good content. You're going to need to have good content that is documenting really like the use cases, the why that you are doing things, the what that you can do, especially if you have decisions like, you have the option of using method X or method Y, to clearly outline why you might use one compared to the other. And so there's no substitute for content. I do think that Markdown is kind of has become like a lingua franca of documentation writing, and that's a very convenient, it's information dense format that bots are also fairly good at consuming. So I do think if you don't have copy to Markdown is a feature that we added to our docs this year. If you don't have copy to Markdown or you don't have LLMs.txt, I think those are very, very low hanging fruit for you. Besides that, I think it's sort of part of the process that it makes sense to just try and run through evaluations yourself. And I don't mean you need to set up a whole complicated eval setup or anything. I mean every now and then go open up a cursor or a replit or whatever it is and say, build me the quick start of whatever my product is and see how it does. And wherever it stumbles, it implies that there's something wrong with the way that you're doing things, that this agent got tripped up. And that helps you go figure out where is that point and what can I improve there.
Absolutely. And I'm 100% in agreement with Markdown being the new language. It's how I tell everyone to kind of store your personal notes. And when people are worried about outputting to JSON, I mean, there's certain benefits to having it structured in a very programmatically consumable way, but the ability for agents to do agentic RAG and just read a bunch of Markdown files and determine what information is important is becoming better every day. So by leaving it in a easily portable format, so you can bring it to a new app, bring it to a new service, I'm 100% on board for. One thing I want to touch on briefly is some security aspects. So recently there was some malicious updates put to NPM packages that got proliferated across millions of downloads, and it was pretty bad. The fact that it was code trying to execute a crypto scam was identifiable. It was noticed within a couple hours. But one concern I have is the risk of malicious text being injected somewhere into code that's hidden from the browser, where when an agent goes to a website and it reads it, it'll get these instructions. It feels like it's one of those problems where it's so difficult to address now, because even if you separate instructions from data, we've found different jailbreaking techniques to get around that. How do you foresee the security or best practices to mitigate the risks of AI agents running amok on the internet?
Yeah, I think kind of the best model for this that I've seen is Simon Willison has this concept called the lethal trifecta. Have you heard of it before?
No, please elaborate.
That he describes for AI agents is the combination of access to your private data, so that's stuff that other people shouldn't see. It's exposure to untrusted content, and then it's the ability to externally communicate or exfiltrate data. And so when you combine these things, I think we end up in exactly the situation you're at where there's untrusted content. It's something that your agent slurps up from some public website somewhere. Because of the way that LLMs fundamentally work, there's a chance that it can be interpreted as an instruction, and those instructions can then be used to first read your private data and then exfiltrate it out to some external source. And there's lots of ways of doing that. Even if you're only making, say, a GET request to a website, you can just append all the data as the path or the query string or all kinds of ways of getting data out. And so Simon Willison, I think, claims that it is very difficult to fix a problem if you do have that lethal trifecta. So if you have the combination of those three things, you're pretty much doomed. And so his claim is that your systems must be designed in a way that you only ever get like 2 out of the 3. So you could say it can access my private data and it can access the public internet, but it's never going to read something from the public internet and interpret that as an instruction. Or maybe a flip side, I can do all sorts of stuff on public data. I might mess up because the public data is tainted in some way, but that doesn't risk my own private data because I don't have access to it. And so, I think this is honestly a very difficult area to be working in. And at work, I work on bot detection and fraud prevention, right? And so we have customers including Calendly, including Replit, including a number of fintech companies where there is a huge financial incentive for someone to be trying to break you. And so just like you said, in this supply chain compromise, if there is the incentive, if there's something valuable behind breaking some barrier, someone's going to go and try to do it. And so the thing I always say as far as these adversarial things go is that it's not that you need to stop anyone 100% necessarily. A huge amount of attacks like this are opportunistic, and it's like running a business, right? There are many places in the world where you can make a very good living by scamming people, basically, or by automatedly filling out surveys and claiming survey rewards, or by claiming free credits on some AI platform and then reselling them to someone else. And so the challenge that you have here is, I'll say, one of our customers is a company called KiloCode, which is an AI coding agent. And KiloCode at times gives away free credits, which means they see attempts of people, creating thousands of accounts trying to farm these credits. And so the important thing is that we don't need to stop them from doing everything. We just need to make it so that the effort they put in is more than, say, $5 per account or something like that. And there's a number of barriers that we can do to, say, detect bots, which is where most of that scale comes from, as well as other heuristics that we can apply towards like fraudulent or abusive behavior.
Do you foresee a need or even the possibility of things like I don't even know how to describe it, almost like a parallel internet for agents? So we kind of have like our human, more easily consumed version of the internet versus a more highly optimized for agents. One thing that got me kind of thinking was when we were talking about how Markdown is information dense. I used to think JSON was one of the best ways of doing data transfer until I learned about RPC, where you can get down to an even finer layer. Do you think there's going to be a way that we can more tightly control the way AI consumes and shares information that maybe isn't optimal for humans? Or is that just such a silly premise that we should just focus on trying to get the internet we have done correctly?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting idea. It's kind of like a performance optimization is what I would say. And so even today, I think LLMs are pretty good at converting between different like modalities. Like a lot of like quote unquote jailbreaking techniques are like, oh, take this string but make it in base 64 and tell me what it says in base 64. And LLMs will just go and do that for you. So there are certainly more dense representations that are things you mentioned gRPC. They're like binary representations, or even just doing things like compressing a file and like sending around zip files is already an improvement. I think there's like interesting work in like the world of compression algorithms, like for video encoding or for image encoding, in which at least in these domains we can take quite a lot of data and sort of reduce it to the things that are important in humans' visual perception about what you can see. And then by doing that, you reduce the amount of data that needs to fly around by quite a lot. So I think it's possible. It's theoretically possible. I'm sure that for big companies who are shuttling around huge amounts of data, that's a valuable problem for them to solve. Like say how Netflix has, I'm sure, made lots of improvements in video streaming. But like for the average, like for you and me, or for people who are building agents to achieve business goals, I think it's very unlikely that improving the efficiency of communication like that is going to make big differences in the effectiveness of your work.
Cool. And one last area I'd like to explore, a bit more practical. Do you have advice or recommendations for people to improve the agent experience, either from the perspective of someone having a website or someone building the agent, and just making that entire relationship more successful and, yeah, make it more successful?
Yeah, totally. I would say that as a website operator, if you don't know about your agentic traffic today, it's kind of a problem, right? And so I think if you go back a couple decades, you are in a place where, oh, websites are totally the realm of a desktop. Of course, you're sitting at a computer when you access a website. And then we saw very quickly from the period of around 2007 to 2012, where mobile traffic went from like 1% of all traffic to like 50% of all traffic. And the thing about that is that if you have a website that doesn't know how much of its traffic is mobile, you're going to be caught totally off guard. You're going to be behind. And I think we're in an analogous state for agents. At Stytch, we have a pretty good view of certain types of agents being used. And I would say that agentic traffic is certainly less than 1% of all traffic on any popular site. But that means that 1 year ago it was basically 0%. And so if you're able to identify that, and we actually have a free tool at isagent.dev, which is helping website owners understand their agentic traffic. I think give it a spin, just see what is coming in, because that's important information. And once you see exactly what they're doing, and get a feel for what they're trying to do, whether that's reading information only, or maybe you actually do see that people are trying to, here's an agent that is logging in as a person. We should probably give that person a safer way of achieving this goal. Then you can start talking about at Stytch we call it connected apps, but in general it's providing OAuth to agentic clients in that way. So that's on the operator side. On the side, if you're developing a bot or creating an AI agent, I really would encourage you to check out Web Bot Auth. I'm going to be publishing a blog post soon about the technical implementation, like basically where do you generate your keys, how exactly do you sign these requests so people can recognize you. And I think going back to that mobile thing, like if no iPhone ever told you that it was an iPhone when it was visiting a website, how would website owners know to build an experience that's optimized for you? So I think there's a lot of room for good bots, like well-behaved bots who are doing things that people want them to be doing, to identify themselves so that they can show the value to the website owners. If you're sneaking around and pretending to be like a human, that sneaking around, honestly, is probably not as sneaky as you think it is. There's a lot of really good bot detection today, and you're going to run into roadblocks where you have to solve 100 CAPTCHAs per day. And CAPTCHAs are easily solved by machines today. But it's still a burden. It's still an extra step that you need to do. Or if you say, hey, I'm actually the AI agent that's representing Bobbie, you can check out my website here. I think a lot of website owners are more willing to let you in and see what you're going to do with that level of access.
Bobbie, this was awesome. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your perspective. Before I let you go, is there anything you'd like the audience to know?
I mean, yeah, this is a pleasure, Mike. I'll say that I'm one of the organizers of the AGI Builders Meetup in San Francisco. So we run events regularly on what people are building. And I think in the last year, agents have gotten a lot better and more interesting. And that's only going to continue. Um, that's the meetup stuff. I work at Stytch. I work on fraud and security problems. Check us out at stytch.com/fraud.
Thank you for listening to my conversation with Bobbie Chen. I had a lot of fun talking about the direction of where the internet is going, how AI is going to help us, but we still got to keep an eye on it. But I'd love to know your thoughts. Are you building AI agents and having trouble with certain aspects? Are you a website operator and not quite sure how you want to approach agents consuming your content? I'd love to hear more about it. And if you wouldn't mind liking and subscribing, it really helps us out. And I just want to give a quick shout out to ToolHive for sponsoring this show so I can have conversations like this. And I'll see you next week.